Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for making time to be here. My name is Heather Grant. I'm one of the community admins at the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. Thank you once again for joining us today. If you are not already a member of the maintenance community on Slack, I will drop a link on how to sign up in the chat in just a moment. We would love to have you join us. Today I have with me Bob Latino. Bob is joining us for a presentation on doing an RCA, on why RCA programs fail. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot. The recording from our session today, as well as a couple of materials that you see here, will be available in the maintenance community Slack tomorrow. Bob himself also is available in the maintenance community to answer questions live. So please feel free to share the recording of this webinar or the invitation to Slack directly with your friends, colleagues, or anyone else you know who would benefit from hearing some of Bob's expertise. Last piece of housekeeping, and then we'll go ahead and get started. You'll notice that your cameras and microphones are not turned on today. So what you want to do if you have any questions for Bob or want to answer any questions that he may pose to you, you'll use the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen there. Please feel free to jump in and say hello. We have a couple of saying hello already. Let us know where you're joining from. We love to hear from all of you. We will do our best to incorporate questions as they come up, as well as at the end of our time today, but any questions we don't get to, we'll be sure to answer offline in the community. That is it for me. Thank you again, Bob, and everyone for being here with us today. And Bob, I will turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Heather, as always. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I will forewarn you, I will appreciate your patience. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started on this, and we're going to talk. Our objectives are pretty simple in my world of failure and root cause analysis. Is that we're going to look at the problem, we're going to analyze the problem, and then we're going to look at solutions. It's pretty simple. And I use this particular clip snippet a lot. And so if you're in the RCA business, this is where the way people a lot of people feel if you're an analyst. Because RCA is always associated with this negative stuff, so that nobody sees you as coming down the hall with good news. So people close their doors behind you, but these penguins kind of identify what it's like to be an RCA analyst. Okay, Heather knows that I'm trying to be cool with this because I just learned how to do this, and it should be more common now with the restaurants and during our COVID period. But if you use your phone and you go to your photos and you have that Q code reader, this little poll is going to come up. And what I'm trying to, and you can also take that URL right there, and that will take you to the same place. I'm trying to do a little bit of a pre-poll. I said, in your experience, what's the primary reason that most RCA programs fail? You'll notice in these options here that I use LTA a lot, and you'll see that in the analysis. That stands for less than adequate. So the primary reason you see RCA fail at your place, is it methodology related? Is it the training, less than adequate training that we provided to our folks? Is it management? We lack management support to the field analyst? Is it that we didn't provide them the right tools, solutions, software, that we didn't set any expectations for the program at all? So it's really easy to meet that when you don't have any expectations. Or we have a lot of good stuff in place, it's just that nobody enforces it. I'd like to go ahead and see if I can manipulate my screens here and go into here. Oh, we do have quite a few people who have done this. Okay, so here's the poll, and this is a more even split than the last time I did this. So on this particular one, we're showing that the predominance is going to be less than adequate training provided to the field analyst and leadership, and that's consistent with what I say all the time. Coming in a close second is that we have rules, it's just that nobody enforces the rules. Because I can tell you, as we go through this particular analysis, you're going to find that we do a lot of, we take a lot of shortcuts in RCA because we're not provided the time and opportunity to do them right, so we have to do them now. Okay, let me go ahead and put this back up. And these were the actual results from the last one of these that I did, forget when. But you can see in that the enforcement is still number one, number two. But in this particular case, the training was not as great as for this particular group. Okay, well, thanks for participating in that. And we're going to hit on all of these, and we're going to show how they together form an RCA system. All right, what's the problem that I want to describe for this particular session that we're holding? We're saying that our RCA program is not meeting expectations. So my event in this case is going to be a failure of the RCA program to meet expectations. This means that we have an RCA program. I sense that when we have these programs and they're not all consistent, that everybody does it differently. There's not really any quality control of the RCAs, that someone's evaluating it for accuracy and effectiveness. And while we might be compliant, we can't demonstrate that we get a bottom line benefit from the RCA. So if I'm in leadership of an organization and I know that we have an RCA program and I'm looking for, I'm funding this, where's the justification to keep it going? So look at this particular analysis from that standpoint. Okay, I do want to give a little bit of background on here about the root system that we're going to be going through. When I talk about these blocks right here, this is the germination of a failure. Where does a failure come from? Real quickly, these things on the bottom represent organizational systems. Okay, these are like the laws of our country and our localities. But these are the systems in place to help us make better decisions: policies, procedures, human factors, communication, technology, training. And the one to the far right is an important one because it's management, oversight, and enforcement. That means that we can have really great stuff here, but if we're not enforcing it, it doesn't matter. And that's often a contributor to the RCAs that I deal with. We try to sharpen our pencils with these organizational systems and make them as up to date as possible so that when people make decisions, it's with the most current data. Okay. So that's in order for these systems to fail, that means that I'm going to give all of this information, it may be outdated, obsolete, insufficient, to this person, and this person is now going to have to make a decision. Up until this point, I want you to recognize that we can't see how people think. We can only see the consequences by their actions. So I can't see reasoning, but when they make a decision, something observable is happening now. I can see cause and effect relationships as a result of these actions that people take. Okay, so that's a key difference here, is that this is observable. Now, these cause and effect sequences are going to continue to escalate until we come to this threshold of pain I call right here at this arrow. This threshold of pain means that most organizations who have RCA efforts have triggers. And those triggers are really, it's too late because somebody's hurt, we lost a lot of money, we have a regulatory violation, or a customer is really ticked. So we want to avoid having this undesirable outcome. And a lot of times our preventive and our predictive tools that we use, which is what this community is all about, we prevent these chains from connecting all the way to that bad outcome all the time. But then we end up with something called a near miss, which in technical terms means we got lucky. So that often will give somebody the choice of saying, well, do I do an RCA on a near miss because it really didn't happen? I just want you to know that for you and for your bosses, that if you depending on the potential severity, if it had happened, that the root system that got it that far along is still there, even if we choose not to look at it. It is likely to crop up again. Okay, so now for labeling purposes. These are latent or systemic roots. The active decision making is going to be a human root. And the consequences, the immediate consequences after a decision are going to be called physical roots, things that we can see, component level stuff. Okay, I don't care what you call these labels as long as we do something about it. A lot of different approaches use different labels. It doesn't matter. All right, I want to put in your mind now an hourglass image as I did going into this section, where the H is the human decision. Everything above that deals with the physical sciences, the physics of failure, and everything beneath that deals with the social sciences, the understanding of human reasoning. Okay, why good people do what they do. Okay, so event reconstruction. This is what I'm about to go through, and I want to make you familiar with blocks that you're going to see. The block at the top is going to be the event. The reason the event is important is because it defines why your management cares. I will challenge those who would say that we do RCAs on incidents, because we don't. We do RCAs typically on consequences. So while we cling to the broken stuff, if the broken stuff didn't cause a business level consequence, we probably wouldn't be doing an RCA on it. What I mean by that is, I can say we had a failed bearing, but typically we're going to do an RCA because the bearing caused a pump to fail. A pump caused an unexpected shutdown, and we lost so many hours or dollars of production. So keep in mind that most of your leadership does not care about broken stuff in an RCA. They don't care about overload, fatigue, and bearings and shafts. They care about this top block, and that's why you have to define what is the business level impact at that top block, because that's what associates them with your analysis. Okay, beneath that is going to be the failure mode. This is going to be the equipment that failed. This is something we can all relate to, which would typically we do define as the event. But in this case, I'm trying to change the perception that the event should be a business level thing. All right, we come to failure mode, and I want you to recognize colors here because they're going to matter. And the fact that this is a solid lines indicate that these are facts, and dotted lines, as we'll come to, indicate things are hypotheses. All right, we're going to continue the questioning from the facts. And there's a big difference in asking the question, how could versus why. And I'm going to advocate in RCA that while we're going through the physics of failure, remember the hourglass in the top half, that deals with the physical sciences. Asking how could will generate a different set of answers than why. How could looks at all the possibilities, okay? So in the physics of failure, we want to understand all the possibilities because failure is not linear and two things often happen at the same time. So that's what we want to be able to do with that. We come up with hypotheses. That goes back to our science classes when we were in high school. Educated guesses. They're indicated by this light blue box, and it's got dotted lines because it's not proven yet. It's just a hypothesis. Okay. All right, when a hypothesis is proven to be true with evidence, we change those dotted lines to solid line. When they are proven to be not true with evidence, it's grayed out in a solid line. And when you attach files and metallurgical reports and things like that to a block, you'll see a little paper clip going on there, indicating from a visual digestion standpoint that when your leadership is looking at this, they should be able to tell the story from just reading the tree. Okay. Okay, and then you're going to see some more colorful stuff. I often refer to this stuff like a Christmas tree, is that we're just putting different colored balls on it. As we go through this tree and we identify things that are systemic in nature, human, physical, we will just apply different color labels to them. When we do have systemic stuff, we want to be able to hang the Christmas ornaments on there that are green, and that's going to be our corrective actions. These are the things that we plan on doing to get rid of this root cause from happening. Okay. All right. Now, let's go ahead and get back to our analysis. Finally, I have to look it up because I have a couple in here. All right, this is going to be my summary one because you'll see that it's a very expansive tree. That I want to show that we talked about the event. My modes in this case are going to be that my failure modes are that we can have an RCA process or system related problem, or the RCA process or system expectation related. So this is going to, the right one is going to deal with the managerial and leadership expectations for the program overall. And then that's more strategy. And then the left one is going to deal with tactics, the methodology, the training, the implementation. Okay, I'll show you why I truncated that one. Because in reality, my big tree looks like this. Let me get rid of these hatches because I don't like those in the back. And for the sake of us digesting what I want you to see while I'm explaining, let me go ahead and hide some of these things. Okay. So now I'm coming down, and we always read the story backwards, is that how could I have an RCA methodology related issue that results in a process failure that results in us not meeting the expectations of the organization? Okay, my potential hypotheses here. Now remember, because I'm not looking at any singular event here, I'm just using this like a troubleshooting flow diagram. And that is a point that I wanted to make to you all. When you look at this in its entirety, and you could take this into your organization, and Heather will be giving you this later, and it could be a troubleshooting flow diagram for an RCA. You'd go through and say, do we have this issue or don't we? And then I could come in here and I could say, well, that one's not true, and this one is true. So essentially, that template is being built for you to go through and do an RCA assessment if you wanted to. Okay. All right. So how could it be RCA methodology related? Well, the RCA methodologies were less than adequate. What do I mean by that? Let's go over here. They lack comprehensiveness. Okay. So when I talk about lacks comprehensiveness, that's going to be talking about breadth of approach. So when I'm looking at that, I'm saying that that's the difference between asking how can and why. Think about that. If I say how can a crime occur, it's going to be a population of different answers than I say why. If I ask how could a bearing fail, I'm going to get multiple possibilities, as opposed to when I often say why, I'm insinuating that I want a singular answer in somebody's opinion. Okay, so the tool sometimes, like if I'm using a 5 whys on a serious event, it lacks comprehensiveness, because 5 whys in its traditional format gives the impression that failure is linear, and oftentimes, especially complex events, they are not linear. They have parallel paths to failure. Okay, how can our methodology be less than adequate? We lack evidence-based capabilities to prove conclusions. Well, what do we mean by that? We allow conventional wisdom to fly as fact. How many times have you been on a team where we didn't have time to get to collect evidence, but we listened to the people that had seniority? And I've been here 30 years. I've seen this 1,000 times, which I always ask myself, well, why did we have it happen 1,000 times? And obviously, what we did in the past didn't work. So a true RCA, an effective RCA, will not depend on hearsay to fly as fact. We need sound evidence. Less than adequate knowledge to properly validate hypotheses. We don't have the tools we need to prove whether something's true or not. How many of us have access to, if I have a failed part, say I have two parts of a shaft, and I need somebody to look at it. I need somebody with a metallurgical background, a materials background, to say, is this erosion? Is this fatigue? What is it? So I need to know enough to be dangerous to ask and identify what resources that I need. Less than adequate collection, storage, and dissemination of evidence. Well, ask yourself, I don't know if you have RCA policies or RCA procedures, but those procedures should outline the expectation of how to collect evidence and what type of evidence to collect, and where to stage it and things like that. Because if there's no expectation to collect the evidence, then it's going to go in the trash can. It's going to be part of a cleanup operation for production to get back up. And that's like going to the crime scene, you know, say it was outside on a lawn somewhere, and, you know, we just clean up the lawn, we mow it, and we say, you know, we threw all the evidence away. We're doing the same thing if we go ahead and don't collect and preserve evidence at a failure scene. Okay, lack of flexibility to adapt to situations at hand. This is when the tools that we're using them inappropriately. So I go back to the 5 whys on the complex type of event. I'll say that you know, we used a fishbone under inappropriate circumstances, or, you know, we took out an elephant gun to shoot a mouse, and we used a full-blown logic tree type of approach for something that should have been done with a 5 why. So we have to look at the flexibility to adapt to the situations at hand, and depending on the tool that we're using. Lack of appropriate depth for the consequence of the event. Now think about this. If you're looking at, I was using bearing, and say you go ahead and you find that the bearing was fatigued, and we don't take it any further. We say that you know, that's the conclusion we're going to draw, and we'll blame the vendor or the supplier or somebody other than that who provides the materials, and say we change them out. Well, if it wasn't that, and it was actually that, you know, we had forces on that particular bearing that were from the operation, you're just going to fail the next bearing. We want to drill deeper and be able to go past the human who say that they were aligning the piece of equipment and they didn't align it properly. Am I going to blame him? Am I her? You know, is that going to make it go away if I blame somebody? If I don't understand why they're not aligning properly and get into those systems things, then it doesn't matter. It's going to happen again. RCA is about going to the proper depth and understanding why good people made bad decisions at that time. If we're not going to that depth, it's likely going to happen again. Okay, that's what I mean down here about it. It does not uncover the system stuff, the socio-technical stuff. All right, and then we go to the other side. We say it was too hard a process to document or follow. How many of your RCAs go in there and, you know, it's not a 6-step process, it's a 18-step process, and you say, you know, I got a real job. You know, this RCA stuff was thrown on my lap, and now I got this thesis that I have to go through in order to understand what are the proper steps to go through. It takes too much time to follow those steps. I should have done a poll for this too, now that I think about it, because, you know, what takes the most time to do an effective RCA? I think that in my experience, it's the collection of evidence. It's the collection and preservation of evidence. So that whenever we're time pressured to do RCAs, and we have to come up with an answer because somebody's put like a 30-day moratorium or a mandate on this so that we have to hurry up, I'll give you an answer in 30 days. It may not be the right answer, but I'll certainly give you one. We have to be able to say that if you want people to do RCAs properly, you have to clear the time for them to do that. Evidence collection takes time, and outside of that, you're going to get conclusions based on assumption, and that's where we went back to using hearsay to fly as fact. All right, it's too difficult to track bottom line results and justify the RCA. And this is one that we find is lacking in education, because we don't teach people who do RCAs how to make a business case for getting their corrective actions done. And I think that that's a big need in the industry, because the people that you're pitching this to are money people, typically. And what we have to do is be able to talk in their language and say, you know, if we implement these recommendations, that you can expect an ROI of so many % within this year and a payback period of 4 months. That's what they understand. And that, you know, money talks. And in my experience, 30 some years into this, for every dollar you spend towards an effective RCA system, you should expect $6 to $10 back. If your RCA effort is not paying for itself, self-funding to the nth degree, then we're doing it wrong. And that a lot of these things that I'm going through here are some of those things that are detracting from your ability to do that. Okay, so let me go ahead and hide that. Let's open up the next one here. And this is going to be training related. All right. So how can we have a training related issue which contributes to our RCA program not being effective? Well, the training quality is less than adequate. And how has that come to be? The instructors were less than adequate. Well, why were the instructors? Because I'm at a person thing now. I'm asking, why were the instructors less than adequate? Well, the vendors' instructors were inexperienced in the industry where they were training, and that falls on us. That's our bad. Poor due diligence by the client. Because if I should be requesting someone from our industry. How many times if you work in a steel mill that you have someone from the chemical industry coming in, or for that matter, they send software people in to do RCA training, because if you do that, the people you're giving training to, they can see right through you. It's like looking through a window. If you put someone in there who doesn't know what they're talking about, the veterans in the field, that they will see right through it. Now, I was talking earlier about hanging labels and things on here, that if I went through and I use this as a template and I say my instructors were less than adequate, let's say that this turns out to be because I can see that the training quality was less than adequate, and it was due to a human thing. And then say, well, what's the systems level thing here as to why we were able to put instructors in those positions that were not qualified? That would be a systems level thing. Oops. So this is what I was talking about. If you go through here and you're using this as a troubleshooting flow diagram, is that I should be able to look at this now and say the red stuff influences the decisions, the orange stuff, which triggers this physical stuff to be seen. Okay. All right. The vendors' instructors were inexperienced in the RCA methodology. Does that ever happen? That people are put out there to train on a tool that they don't use in the field. There may be software developers that they're sending out as instructors. Okay. Facility trainers were inexperienced in the chosen methodology. This is where we say, well, we took people from our own organization because we're veterans from here, but they've never used the methodology in practice. So that we put them out there and we make them trainers, but they really don't have the experience in the methodology. They have experience in their work, but not the methodology. So why would we do that? Well, the decision to not use the train the trainer with selected vendor methodology was due to we wanted to save some money. So we went on the cheap, we used our own people, and then we didn't get the benefit of the training. Okay, the other reason would be that we did check the vendors train the trainer options, and they were less than adequate. So we opted not to do that. Okay, now let's look at the student themselves. We talked about the training itself to the student. Now, what about the students? This is interesting for me because there's a difference between those who volunteer and those who are forced to go to the training. We certainly would want people volunteering to be in these types of courses, because if you want to do this, you'll be much better at it than if you have to do this. So a lot of people aren't cut out for this type of work. So we would cling to the volunteers because they're much more motivated. The students who were forced to participate, they see this as another task on their already full plate. So they see this as a burden. I used, in the last time I did this session, I gave an example. I was at a paper mill in Alabama. Not going to mention any names. It was out in a tree farm at a hunt club. And two key factors here are that it was on a weekend and it was a union group. So you can imagine, if you put yourself that visual of sitting in a hunt club on a Saturday with a union group and learning RCA. Nobody was interested in RCA. They were ticked as to why they were out there in the first place. They were forced to be there. So knowing that, I did this type of analysis with them. I scrapped all the PowerPoints and everything. I knew they were never going to do it. And I facilitated an RCA on why RCA would never work at their mill. And they were more than happy to give me all of the reasons of why this would never work. And at the same time, they were learning RCA unbeknownst to them, because the logic we were using to draw those conclusions was the root cause I was teaching. I also, at the conclusion of that, used that particular RCA that I did with the people that hired me, and was just as candid as I'm being here with you about it, is to say this will never work because unless you address these potential root causes that they're coming up with, then you're wasting your money. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll take care of that one out. And what was the other one? Implementation related. All right. How could we talked about the training, we talked about the students. Now we're saying we did the training well, we did the train the right people, but we didn't implement it right. The trained students did not properly implement. Well, why would that be? Well, the management systems were not in place to do so. Have you ever been to training when you go and when you go back? It's almost like a lot of time it's managerial therapy to spend money on training and say you did it. But there really is no expectation for a benefit from going there, because if I come back and there's no expectation for me to do it, then it's going to be business as usual. You know, I got a couple of days off. If I was at a hotel, I got donuts and lunch, whatever the case may be. So we should, you know, most organizations will have a capital expectation for capital projects of an ROI. What's your capital? Ask your bosses this. Well, what's your ROI, corporate ROI expectation for training? You know, there's this is an old number. It's probably 10 years old, and I'm embarrassed to give it, but I haven't seen a new one. The American Society for Training and Development at that time said that the annual monies spent for industrial training were $65 billion. But only 20% of that was ever attempted to be implemented. So think about the huge waste of money for training when we don't set up training systems properly. Okay, so the management systems were not in place. If you don't set expectations, then I can surely meet that all day long. The students did not implement because they were too busy. If you're going to just throw this as another thing on somebody else's plate, that's what they're going to see it as. They're going to do the minimum requirements to give you what you want. It might be compliant, but it will not be effective. Students see this as on their plate already, and it's reactive work systems. I'm always responding. You'll never. It's a different topic I can't get to today, but there's all sorts of ways you can do RCA proactively. But unfortunately, we have to control the fix so that the fix doesn't control us. We have to be very pointed in our efforts to be reactive and get the reactive work down and increase the proactive work. Too much time had elapsed from the time we did the training. How often you see that, where you go to training and then say they sent you to RCA training, but they didn't call you in to do it, actually implement it until 3 months later when a failure occurred. You say, oh yeah, I remember Harry. Yeah, we gave him that training. We spent $2,000 on that. Let's go ahead and get him back in here now. Chances are Harry remembers very little details from that course 3 months ago, and he never implemented it. So it's going to be very difficult for Harry to pick up the pieces, especially on a high visibility type of thing. But Harry will do it because that's what Harry's job is. All right, management systems related, the RCA champion. This is the person who oversees the RCA effort. They carry the flag for the effort. The executive performance criteria was not effectively communicated to them. If there were executive criteria, if anybody should know it, it should be your RCA champion. If you didn't do that right, then how can you expect the people on the front lines to do it? Less than adequate time was provided to the analyst to conduct proper RCAs. If you prior to training and then student selection, analyst selection, then you should be having a sit down with each of them and saying, 15% of your time is going to be dedicated to doing this RCA stuff. We're clearing your plate to 15%, and this will fill it. RCA recommendations were not implemented in a timely manner. See this all the time too. You always have the trade-offs here with time and production and cost. Is that we do the RCAs, and think about that. I've been talking about this systemic stuff. When you say you have a procedure that's obsolete, okay, and most CMMS systems are made for repair tasks. The work orders are repair tasks. But what about things that are admin type of things, these systems problems? Say incentive systems for purchasing. Purchasing is getting incentives paid to them for reducing cost, and our maintenance costs are going up because they're buying cheaper stuff. Okay, so we have to look at those type of things and say, well, if I put that into a work order system, what type of priority does a recommendation or corrective action like that have in a CMMS system? So this is just food for thought, that a lot of RCA recommendations address systemic stuff. So there are accommodations that can be made in our CMMS systems to go ahead and address those and give them a higher priority and a chance to be done. Maybe you just put a P in front of it, and it's going to be proactive work or an RCA work. Champion does not properly remove the analyst barriers. Say I need to interview somebody in operations, and I don't, how operations is after the failure. We got to get back up. But you want to interview them before the detail about what they saw goes away. We lose the memory, the detailed memory. So I need somebody to help pave the way for me, and a good RCA champion will be able to do that. They will be able to cover for you. Engineering support for the analyst and the RCAs. It's extremely important. A metallurgist in this line of work, a metallurgist is your best friend. Okay, and I know you've had Heather has been on here before with Shane Turcott of Steel Image. He does a great job of making metallurgical sense. It makes it very practical, very logical. But the key to an RCA, effective RCA, is preserving failed parts and then letting people with the right eyes see and read the story of that fracture pattern. It's absolutely critical to this business. You don't have to know how to do it, but you should know somebody who does. And in your organization, your RCA champion should be giving you resources like that to go ahead so that you just don't wing it yourself. RCA mentoring is not readily available. So, the RCA champion should be themselves, or should have someone else available to you. Because when you leave a classroom, say you've been to an RCA course for 3 days, that don't make you no champion. Expert, because you're going to be uncomfortable going out there and making judgment calls to this RCA because I've been in the classroom 3 days. That's it. So it would be nice to have somebody overlooking our shoulder until we get comfortable with the first few of them. Okay. All right. So now I am going to get rid of this. We went through that. That leg, that was the big leg. All right, so now let's go to if you remember the failure mode stuff, is that we're on the right side now. We just went through all that stuff on the left. And now we're going to talk about expectation related. How could we not have expectations? Well, there was no RCA expectation set from executive management. Why? The expectations were not well thought out by the executive management, and RCA is viewed as a low priority compared to other KPIs. Here's another tactic. if we'll get into manipulative tactics. I'm a believer that you have to talk the business of leadership, and they to a degree that they deserve it because that's how they run the operation. But you should think about KPIs, anybody's dashboard. It's usually the same as a gap analysis. Each metric is a gap analysis. There's a place that they want to be versus a place that they are. RCAs should be directed right towards their KPIs and their dashboards about narrowing those gaps. That's what an RCA is for. Is, you know, if you're here and you have 15% more you can get out of production, then why are we losing it? So politically, you should tie your RCAs to executive dashboards to make your point, and then you're going to get some support and some friends. The RCA expectations are set, but not communicated effectively. Why? The RCA champion has not been designated to oversee the RCA process. Why? RCA system or process steps not well thought out. We didn't go that deep. And think about, I mean, this whole tree that I'm showing to you, everything is cause and effect, and we just keep asking questions about how could and why. But if you don't have a champion, I can tell you that you're going to have future problems, because somebody's got to hold the flag and defend the people in the field doing this. The designated champion that we did assign is ineffective. Why? Inadequate management support. You know, you told me one thing for this job, and when I hop in it, it's not you know, it's the difference between work as imagined and work as done. Is that it's not everything you hyped it up to be. The systems aren't in place, and this is not what I expected. The other reason would be improper selection. Some people just aren't cut out for this. You know, they may have seniority, but that doesn't mean that they have the skill set to go ahead and do this. So this is, again, if somebody has to do this, they won't be as effective as somebody who wants to do this. Okay, the RCA expectations were viewed as unrealistic by the champions. The champions and the analysts were not involved in setting the expectations. Yeah, this gets back again to common sense. When you sit there and you talk about, let's say, for procedures in the field. I mean, in the old days, the procedures were, you know, they're drawn up by the engineers and this war room up there, and it's all head down time, and we didn't used to involve the crafts. I mean, if you want a procedure to be able to be used properly, by God, let the people who have to use them be the ones to help you write them. Same thing with this, is that, you know, if the champions aren't involved in setting the RCA expectations for the organization, then it doesn't have a good chance of succeeding. Okay, so now let me open this back up. Let me open this back up. And my last one. All right, so I'm going to reset this now. And when you look at this now, if I looked at this in its totality as a troubleshooting flow diagram, I could go through here and then say, okay, this is true, this is true, this is not true, this is not true. I could say these are systemic things. I can come over to this one, whatever we had here. And let's say that we had to go ahead and insert corrective action for whatever that might be. And part of my Christmas tree, going to come in here and I'm going to say that that's a corrective action. The point with going through this is multifold. Is that this is a demonstration. I would go through this exact same process if I was in an oil refinery looking at a crude unit failure versus a paper mill on a stand motor, or it doesn't matter. Okay, the same logic that we use about cause and effect relationships, asking how can during the physics of failure, and drilling down past the orange decision maker and understanding the systems is going to be the same process no matter where you go. It doesn't matter if I'm in a hospital. It doesn't matter if I'm in a bank. I do this stuff with my daughter's school. I remember in the 5th grade, I had my daughter doing this. What a nerd, right? And we were doing, I was teaching her how to do RCAs on bullying. And helping the local school systems. The same thing with hospitals type of stuff. So, you know, what I want you to do is, it's about the construction of logic in this manner, identifying physical, human, and latent root causes, and then being able to use this as a communication device for expressing this logical content to whoever your powers that be are. And ultimately, because to me, RCA is so much more than just a task in terms of being a complete system. Ultimately, yes, we want to prevent the thing from happening again. But ultimately, we want to institutionalize knowledge or intellectual capital. Okay, I call it corporate memory as well. So what I want to be able to do is to say that this is a knowledge repository of logic. Think about it at your places, and I'm in the baby boomer generation and facing retirement years. And think about when we don't capture all of the knowledge of those people. They're going to retire. They're going to be out, drinking, having drinks on a beach somewhere, and everything that they know about your operation and how they solve problems goes with them. So this is one way of being able to institutionalize knowledge, so that we can go back and all of these can be emptied into a template. I mean, into a RCA template library, to where I could bring up. I'll just give you a quick example here. Let me just say I added, I'm going to put a dummy block here, and I'm going to say, we used overload before, so let's go ahead and use overload. The way that this logic can work is that if I say overload here, you see this little brain light up over here? There's templates in the background, RCA templates in the background, that thousands of cause and effect relationships. These are all the different ways in which I can have overload of a component. And I can go in here and I could say, I want to have, I don't know, just pick any of them. I was looking for high vibration. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So you pick these type of things, but I want you to understand the concept of using external logic. Okay, is that if you're going ahead and do that, and in your organization, the more RCAs you do, you're organically building this knowledge reservoir, and that should be the primary purpose of having an enterprise class RCA system across a global corporation. Think of how much money that we waste on doing the same RCA over and over again in terms of rework. Think about the amount of labor doing that just because we didn't know that someone in a different country in the same company had worked on the same problem, same manufacturer. So food for thought. The money is there. Okay, so I'm going to get out of here now, and I'm going to go back to here. All right. And my last slide is when we talk about this is the kind of stuff that we do. Everything that I'm looking at here with you is under the umbrella of Reliability Center. We've been in here, this business for 40 years now. To the left side of here, the methodology that I was espousing in there is related to the PROACT RCA methodology. It's a best-in-class tool, field proven to the nth degree. If you need help with anything RCA, from everything that we talked about in that tree, those are the kind of things that we do. And the tool that I was using to express that in is one of our RCA solutions, which is called Easy RCA. So if you like a demo of that type of software, it lives up to its name. It is extremely easy to use, and it adapts to how you do RCA, not to how we do RCA. Okay, I'm not, Heather, I'm not really sure where I am in time, but I'm at my Q&A stage, so that if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to talk shop. Talk shop with Bob time.
That's the name of this segment. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's always a pleasure to watch you kind of run through those really helpful and educational and real life experiences. So super appreciate you taking the time to do that. We have one question and then one kind of question for more information. The one that's coming in for more information just says how to get some slides from the logic tree. I believe I have that document, and I will be sharing it along with the replay in the maintenance community. which I will now drop the link on how to set up in just a moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, the handout piece that you have would be a printout of that logic tree.
Perfect.
And it's in a PNG format. As you can tell, it's kind of big.
Yeah.
Logic tree. So a PNG just has high resolution, either minimizing or maximizing. So it's ideal.
Awesome. Well, then that should answer that. I will drop that into the maintenance community tomorrow. The next question here I see is that it reads, some modules differentiate between root cause and latent cause. Is there a really big difference between the two?
Well, this is going to be another consultant answer that says it depends. To me, I don't really care what you call them as long as you do something about them. But I do make a distinction that if I stop at a physical root and I replace parts, you're likely going to have, I wouldn't call that a root cause, because unless I'm getting to the systemic stuff, most of the stuff that I will call a root cause is going to be the systemic stuff. And it's going to be the systems that are in place that need fixing. Because think about that in the logic strings that I just showed you. If you replace a part, say that we blame the vendor or the supplier or whoever. Say we replace the part. Does the problem go away if the operation was causing it? No. If I go ahead and I blame a mechanic or a technician for not aligning properly, does the problem go away? No, because I don't know why they don't know how to align properly. I would personally be more interested in why somebody was in a job that they didn't know how to do and we didn't know it, or that I gave them crappy tools to do the alignment process, or that Harry retired and we never taught this new guy how to do it. He just watched Harry, and it was it was OJT training, was on the job, and we got by. So that was a long-winded answer for I call the systemic stuff root causes, and once you correct the system causes, it should correct the decision behaviors.
Awesome. We got a few more questions here. We have about 7 minutes left, so we'll get through again as many as we can. Next question up here, it says, can we say behind every TRC, technical root cause, there is an MRC, management root cause?
If I'm going to say that a technical root cause would be physical in nature, dealing with the physics of failure, and that you drill down from that because either we bought bad materials that were deficient from the beginning, or we bought the good ones and then we did something to it that we weren't supposed to. Those would all have systems or management contributions to them. Management is because the same thing as we don't want to blame people for bad decision making. We don't want to blame management. That's why I go with organizational systems, because it could have been a generation ago that put these policies and procedures in, and it doesn't matter who wrote them or when there was, as long as we fix them. So the goal is to identify them. Mm-hmm. Good question, though.
Cool. I'm seeing 3-ish more. So next up, we have, do we need a risk assessment before RCA to see how much or how deep we want to go?
I am going to use a graphic to show you this. And in this particular tool, the first step in what we call a wizard, a 4-step information gathering thing, is that if you went and you did a heat map on the probability that failure would happen again and the impact when it did, if you go in and you say all of this stuff is low, it's going to recommend we do a 5 whys. Okay, so I mean, to answer his question, yes, that the higher the severity, the deeper the depth. But if I say I went up to a 4 here, it's going to move to a fishbone, and if I get up into this region, it's going to say a logic tree type of approach. So that when I get into, if I'm only going to do a 5 why type of thing, I could do that. And if I want to get into doing a fishbone type of thing, This will default to the 6M, but you know, and nobody wants their fish going that way, so we got to turn our fish around so that people don't get ticked off at their fish direction. So the long-winded answer to that is yes, is that the breadth and depth of the analysis is going to be based on the severity or potential severity of the either failure mode that materialized or the one that could happen. And to his point, I'm sorry, I don't know the name, but to his point as well, is that there's no reason, when I talked about doing RCAs proactively, they should be done off of risk assessments where you have a high probability and severity rating. Do a Pareto cut of your FMEA, and then that top 20, those 20% of the failure modes that caused 80% of the risk, do an RCA on those. Why are the failure mode, why are the risks so high? Mm-hmm. And then you're dealing with risk and not consequence. That's the goal of all of this. I don't want to become a better responder at failure. I want to stop it from happening in the first place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wonderful. Moving on to our next question here from David says, can we have a hypothesis that leads us to another hypothesis? Any comment about ISO 14224 failure modes?
Not getting into the weeds like we could with ISO 14224, but I just want to make a very generalization about the term of failure modes because it's used so differently. But a failure mode in a risk assessment is going to be something that is that potentially could happen. Okay, in the RCA context, at least the way that I'm expressing it, a failure mode means that potential failure mode did materialize. It became a fact. Okay, so that's the obvious differentiation that I make in that is that one is about it could happen, one means it did happen.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe a follow-up question also from David there is regarding failure modes, are those physical only?
No, because even in this case, I had failure modes that were not physical in the sense that they were like component-related failures. You know, if you're doing stuff on organizational systems from the beginning, physical in nature is going to mean like you have a paper trail. So say for instance, somebody did a checklist and it triggered a series of things to happen. It would still be physical because it's observable, but it's not physical in the sense that it was a gear failure.
Awesome. Breezing through, we have another 2-ish questions in another minute or so, but we'll get through them. Next question is, what is the best training for principal analysts to be able to deliver a high quality RCA?
Well, that's going to be a purely biased answer. If you get at my email right there, certainly that we do that type of training, and it gets down into whether you know, you're going to be a lead investigator, whether you need basic education in metallurgy 101, human error reduction strategies, things like that. Or if you're just a team member and you just want basic failure analysis, there's all sorts of things that if you went to that website there, there's a learning center attached with it. But I'd be more than happy to answer questions offline about that and not making this too commercial.
Seems like a planted question to me, Bob.
Yeah, well, get their name because I have to pay them.
I'm just joking. One more question coming in says, if a similar failure happens after you close an RCA, do you need to reopen the RCA or initiate a whole new one?
I would, that's a great question because I always say that if I have to do a second RCA, one of the root causes is going to be the deficiencies in the first RCA. So I'm going to be hanging some of those Christmas balls on that tree to say, you know, either it wasn't a quality RCA, or it was a quality RCA and we never did the recommendations, or we did the recommendations and they didn't work. Mm-hmm. So definitely the next RCA you do should cite why the first one was not effective.
Awesome. I see one more question here. If you don't mind answering one more, then we can call it. The question here from Fernando says, what is the most important trigger to do an RCA?
Well, again, that's going to be an it depends, because that goes organization by organization. I can just tell you that the 4 primary triggers are going to be that a certain level of production loss. There's going to be that we had some type of regulatory violation. Somebody was hurt. Trying to remember what the 4th one was. But they're all business level consequences. I always talk about it because I haven't probably worn a suit in 10 or 15 years. Is that if you have an RCA and the suits show up, you've hit a trigger.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I lied a little bit. There's one more question I would love to just get through. From Pascal, it says, what's the difference or relationship between RCA and TQM?
Well, TQM, again, there's going to be various definitions of that. Total quality management. It had its day. I don't know if it's as popular today in this traditional sense, because I think that it's been kind of hijacked by different acronyms now. It's been repackaged under different names. TQM itself can have if I'm looking at quality problems, I would see RCA as a component of TQM. Is to say that when you identify quality problems throughout that process, that I would use RCA as a tool to say why do those quality problems exist.
Awesome. Well, that is it. Those are all of our questions. Thank you for staying a few minutes past the hour to take care of those. And thank you, everyone, also for staying a few minutes past the hour. I really appreciate everyone's participation today. Bob, thank you so much once again for walking us through the logic tree, as well as some of your preamble before that. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. See you soon.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for all your time, and thanks, Heather, as usual, for all your effort.
Awesome. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.